Thank you very much for coming for this NTDA seminar. We're going to be talking about opportunities to hopefully profit from TPMS today. So I'm going to take you through the agenda. What do we have? First I'm going to introduce you very briefly to TPMS. I think many of you in the audience have already engaged with it and already have equipment and so on. So I'm not going to spend too much time giving you a big lecture about it. The second stage of the presentation is really to talk about commercial opportunities. What are the individual revenue opportunities? Where can you actually make some money? And then the important thing is what you need to maximise those revenue opportunities. What are the building blocks? So we're going to talk a little bit about training. Very important, very passionate we are about inspection procedures, earning customer loyalty. How can you go about that? How can you engage with them? And also making sure you have good technical support from your supplier partners. And finally, perhaps the most exciting for the TPMS providers in the room is I'm not going to tell you what equipment to choose. This is a completely neutral presentation, but I'm sure many of you are bewildered with the various different options of TPMS equipment that's out there. We're going to give you a few pointers and break down a few basics of different things to consider really when choosing equipment, but nothing more than that. So without further ado, TPMS, I think we all know it stands for Tyre Pressure Monitoring System. Essentially there are two different types that are installed in vehicles. There's the direct system, which I'm going to find my laser pointer over here, normally involves sensors which are mounted to tyre valves and are inside the tyre. They're transmitting a whole multitude of information directly to the vehicle's ECU or receivers, and you're getting a display on the dashboard telling you if there's a tyre pressure problem. The second type of TPMS system is what we call an indirect system. And normally it revolves around utilising the vehicle's ABS sensors, or wheel speed sensors, and using software algorithms to estimate if there's been a deflation and comparing wheel speeds across axles. For the purpose of today's presentation, we are only talking about direct systems, those pesky pressure sensors, just as we have a sensor manufacturer coming and joining us. Thank you very much, Paolo. There's pesky sensors that give us a hard time. That's what we're talking about today. So what are the key market drivers? Why do we need to get involved in TPMS? Why bother? A lot of people say, oh, I don't see enough of these things. Well, we've got legislation. 2 years ago, we were talking about the phase-in process that happened. And here we are, just weeks away from every new vehicle sold in Europe must have a form of tyre pressure monitoring system fitted to it. Whether that is direct, whether that is indirect, it must have a form of it. So it's coming at us, and it's coming at us quickly, and as you'll see from the next slide, the vehicle manufacturers have been ramping up production to make sure that they've got a system which is compatible with EU regulations. What we also have is we have MOT approaching, and we have a gentleman here from the DVSA. Sean, I'm looking at you right now, so he's going to answer any big technical questions you have at the end, maybe. And essentially, that was introduced for vehicles that first had TPMS fitted from January 2012. So a lot of people have been talking about, oh, we must get involved in TPMS because of the MOT, Well, not quite, but now it's approaching. Those vehicles that first had TPMS fitted in 2012, January, well, 1st of January 2015, they're going to go through their MOT inspections, and that's when they're going to start potentially failing if they've got dashboard lights on. So it's another issue, another sort of regulatory reason to get involved in TPMS. There's also the early adopters in the crowd. I can see you, I'm smiling at you, you know who you are. Who have said, well, hang on a second, I'm not going to wait for this, I'm going to get involved now, I'm going to get involved early, I'm going to hopefully make some good profit from this, I'm going to train my staff up, and I'm going to disseminate all that information, it's very important, through my network of staff. And they've been capturing the existing vehicle park that's been out there for a long time. So I'm sure you're familiar with those Renaults, Peugeot 407s, Chrysler Voyagers, Grand Cherokees and so on and so forth, Bentleys and so on. Many cars have had TPMS actually for quite some time, direct systems. We've got perhaps another key reason for getting involved, and just with any basic supply and demand of product. At the moment, we're looking at, by the end of November for us personally as a business, we are aware of about 2,000 retail points that we interact with that will have TPMS capabilities within their sites, their retail sites. So, is the market getting saturated? Perhaps. As the market gets saturated, is the profit opportunity to decline? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But I think what's important again is going back to what I said about the early adopters. Get in there, learn, train, disseminate that information. The train is coming, as you will see from this next slide, and we can't really avoid it. There's lots and lots of mass market vehicle manufacturers now who are committing to direct TPMS systems. We're talking about Fords here, Vauxhalls, BMWs, Mercedes, Hyundai, Toyota, Fiat. Popular cars that you see on the street that are being sold, Nissan Qashqais, Ford Fiestas, they have TPMS sensors in them. In fact, the Fiesta has a rubber snap-in one, which is causing people a little bit of a fright at the moment because they think it's a normal valve. TPMS sensors are out there. If you're ever stuck in wonderful London traffic like we are constantly seeing cars rolling along with clamping sensors on them, and I'm happy to see it, to be honest. We have a TPMS-equipped vehicle over at the front of the show as well. All Mercedes will have direct systems on them, including the one at the front. So, for those who are saying, no, I don't see it, I don't see TPMS, I think you're going to be seeing it very soon if you haven't already been looking. So what are the opportunities? Well, where can you actually make the money from? So let's look at that. We're going to go into each one of these in more detail, but as a quick summary, you can replace TPMS sensors, you can service them, you can fit lovely aftermarket systems. Paolo, I hope you like the picture there. You can put winter wheel sets on, you can duplicate sensors, you can put track wheel sets on. And essentially, for those retailers in the crowd who charge for tyre valve replacement, or charge for a simple snap-in valve, how are you going to charge for a snap-in valve if you're not replacing a snap-in valve? You need to think about that. There's potential revenue loss there. And we think it's very, very important to have these various strings to your bow of what you're offering your customers. But to be able to do that, customers are going to need a service provider they can trust. And that's where we're going to hopefully help you in the next few slides. So, commercial opportunities, sensor replacement. Why do you have to replace these sensors? What gives you the problems with them? Well, they have batteries inside, and hopefully you can see that great big coin-type battery there. They have lithium-ion batteries, and eventually they fail. And before anyone asks, yes, the battery life is variable. It depends on how much the vehicles are driven. It depends on the atmospheric conditions. If it's cold, for example, batteries drain quicker. We can go into all that detail later. But essentially, let's look at a car 5 years old. Batteries will start failing on these sensors, I think, on average, as far as we're concerned. If they fail, you're going to get a dashboard light on. What are you going to do about it? Well, you can't leave it on because it's going to start failing that MOT test we were talking about earlier. So you're going to need to put that light out somehow, and that's essentially means replacing the sensor. Sensors also get inadvertently damaged by customers who often don't even know what they are. They'll go to the local petrol station and they're filling up some air and they'll snap off the end of these things. And that happens quite often. They can get damaged in accidents. That's another reason why they inadvertently get damaged. I think technicians are still, unfortunately, breaking the odd sensor. Certainly those Fiesta ones we've heard of in the last couple of weeks from incorrect tyre dismount procedures or remount procedures. So a simple bit of training will prevent a lot of that from happening. And then, of course, we have corrosion, and we've got a few pictures there for you. The corrosion is quite severe on some of these things. Aluminium stems are exposed to the environment 24/7. Sometimes people like to put trendy little dust caps on the end of them, which can react with them and make them seize, and that can be a bit regrettable for the vehicle owner. So you've got a lot of corrosion issues to look out for as well. On top of that, you've got certain sensors. We've got some fixed angle ones here that you can't actually replace the valve stem. Some of the sensors you can, some of the sensors you can't. If you can't replace the valve stem and it's heavily corroded like that, there's another sensor replacement reason for you. So what are the traditional ways of changing sensor? What can you do? We're going to do a bit of TPMS basics now, I'm afraid. Well, we can go down two sort of different paths. You can go through a traditional OE sensor replacement process, or even a pre-programmed aftermarket sensor. And what that means is the sensor that you replace in the vehicle has to be compatible with the vehicle. There's lots of different sensors out there today. I think we're into the late 70s, and by next year we're going to be in 90 different sensors out in the market, in the actual vehicle park in Europe. So you have to select the right sensor for the right vehicle. And each sensor has its own unique ID code. And that ID code has to somehow get relearnt by the vehicle. I want you to think about a sensor's ID code as its Bluetooth password. Think of it like a headset and a mobile phone. How do you pair these things up? How do you make sure that that sensor is only speaking to your mobile phone? In the same way, how do we make sure that sensor is only speaking to your car? And you have to go through a procedure of pairing these things up. And there's different ways you can do it. With the original equipment sensor, you can use OBD equipment, or you could hopefully use the vehicle's auto-learn procedure if it has it, which could be a stationary one, which involves pressing a whole sequence of buttons on the dashboard or fiddling around with the keys, and that varies obviously from vehicle to vehicle. Or there's a drive-around procedure. Where we are in London, all I can tell you is drive-around procedures are close to impossible. You would need to drive a car for 10, 15, 20 minutes over a certain speed without stopping. I think some of our motorways don't agree with that concept either. But that's the traditional sensor replacement route that we've been taking these last few years. And certainly the early adopters have had to take that route. Now there's some new technologies available which can make life perhaps a little bit easier, where what you can do is you can actually copy the ID of those individual sensors. So let's say, for example, we have a vehicle and its front left sensor has a code of ABCD. And if you had an OE sensor, it would guarantee to have a different code to ABCD. The vehicle is looking for ABCD in the front left wheel. Well, what we can do is we can take a clonable sensor where you can copy the ID. You take a universal sensor which can fit many, many different vehicles, and you program it to speak the exact same password of ABCD and put it in the same wheel location. And what that will do is essentially trick the car into believing it's got its original sensor still in there. And by doing that, you're avoiding a relearn procedure, whether that's via OBD, whether that's a drive-around procedure, whether that's a stationary procedure. You will be avoiding it. You'll be saving yourself a considerable amount of time. So there's different approaches to how to replace sensors, but I wanted to give you a little idea about that. That's the sensor replacement is probably the most profitable place for TPMS, to be fair. But there's also the opportunity to service sensors. People say, why should I do it? Well, the sensor and vehicle manufacturers certainly recommend a sensor service at every B break. These sensors will be sitting on the vehicle much longer than the tyres in some cases, for many, many, many years. And they're exposed to the environment and they need some sort of help to deal with all this corrosion that they're suffering. So what we do is we tend to take kits of different sorts with all sorts of different components, and you replace a lot of the different components to remove a lot of the corroding parts. In some cases you can actually replace the complete valve stem as well. So you're essentially rebuilding the sensor. And there's less profit opportunity there for sure, but it's an opportunity that shouldn't be missed, especially when you're thinking about those snap-in valves that you've been selling. Suddenly you cannot charge for a snapping valve. So instead you could charge for a service kit. People need to be aware it takes time to fit service kits. They're in many, many different forms. They're not universal. So they all cost different amounts of money, and this is where your TPMS providers will hopefully help you price the different products up for your end customers. But it's a good opportunity to recoup some of that lost snapping valve revenue. From a personal perspective, people ask me, do people really service sensors? I said it's a mixed bag out there. A lot of people find replacing sensors much, much easier, much quicker, much more profitable. But the reality is the customer could have had a service instead of actually having a sensor replacement. Paolo, I hope you like this picture. Aftermarket kits, there's lots of different aftermarket kits available for customers who don't have a direct system in their car. You can add them, use them for track days, safety conscious customers. They're quite nice, they can vary in price. You can plug them into cigarette lighters, they can be battery operated, all sorts of different lovely, wonderful gadgets, and I quite like them. Another sensor opportunity, which is perhaps bigger on the continent, as I'm sure some of our friends in the crowd will agree, is the ability to actually create second sets of sensors. So for example, if you've got winter wheels, you can create a second set of sensors, which is actually regulation. You have to do that in Europe. You can't drive a car which has got winter wheels without a second set of functioning TPMS sensors. And we actually say you might as well clone them at the time to save yourself that hassle of going through a relearn procedure. That's useful not only for winter wheels but also track day wheels. So we've told you the sort of basic revenue opportunities, but now what we've got to do is make sure that we can give you the confidence to go out there and actually earn them. There's no point saying, yeah, I know I need to replace sensors, we need to know how. And we really fundamentally believe that confidence does breed success in this category. Or let me put it another way. How many of you out there have got staff in your networks who are saying, oh, I don't want to touch those sensors, they're pesky, they break, I hate them. I'm going to send them back to main dealer, I just don't want to have anything to do with those things. Well, we've got to give people the confidence to actually deal with these things. We've got to give them the training and deal with that engagement. We're going to talk about that in a moment. So there's lots of different training options available, which you should hopefully be asking your TPMS providers for, whether it's online, whether it's on site, whether it's off-site. We recommend getting some certification as well. Just gives people a sense of achievement when they've got their certification. You can put it in their HR record and so on. I've stuck this one in for one of the early adopters who I'm sure know who I'm talking about in the crowd. Sometimes you get experts in your business, an expert at a particular retail site, and they leave. And you say, oh no, I'm not selling sensors there anymore because Adrian's left, or John's left, or Jim's left. Dean knows who I'm talking about. And it's very important to have some kind of new employee staff turnover contingency plan, as I call it. And if you can parachute a new employee into getting some quick, efficient training in place, very, very useful to make sure those sales are still happening. And that's very, very important as well, is to keep reviewing the sales of sensors, of service kits and so on. And we're going to talk about procedures shortly, but that's how you're going to keep an eye on it, very, very important. Include TPMS as part of your invoice line. Some providers maybe can provide you with training feedback, telling you how your staff are doing on different courses and so on. That's quite useful. It's good to see where the weaknesses perhaps are in your business and where the strengths are. Put your strongest men on the front line. We are very, very passionate about inspection procedures. I think we all like to shortcut things and say, why bother going through all these things step by step by step? I cannot say it enough. If you follow procedures in a rigid manner, it will save you a lot of time and heartache, and it will stop mistakes from happening. So these are some of the things you might want to consider in your inspection procedure. And first and foremost, look at those dashboard warning lights. They're there for a reason. They're telling you something. They're telling you if there's a system fault. They're telling you if there's a low tyre pressure that you can simply go and correct to sort out what's on the dashboard. Have a good look at each sensor. Take your electronic tool, whichever one you have, go and give the sensors a scan. Most sensors, certainly the newer ones, will give you a battery status and see if the battery's low or not. And you'll see later, create an inspection report that you can provide the customer with. Look out for incompatible components. Look out for these lovely dust caps that people like to put on, the max power ones, that might look nice, but they're actually going to cause that TPMS sensor a problem. Look out for seized valve caps. We affectionately a two-finger rule. It sounds unpleasant. What you want to do is just try to open the valve cap with a finger and thumb, and if you can't, stop what you're doing. Don't break it. Go and show the customer. Engage with them. Must engage with them. Do an inspection of the cap, the core, the nut, the stem. Look for cracks. See where the corrosion is. See if that sensor is recoverable or not with a service kit, or whether it's a complete replacement. And produce an inspection report for your customers. There's some fantastic electronic tools out there, as I look at different people in the crowd again, that can actually give you a form of inspection report to hand over to your customer there and there. Very, very useful. Look out for other opportunities, perhaps the harder ones to find. Look out for winter wheel sets. Look out for an enthusiastic track day racer, and give them a set of sensors. And then there's the sanity checks, and we've had some fascinating stories on our support desks here. We've got import vehicles coming in which catch people by surprise, which are running on completely different frequencies. If the car's left-hand drive, ask yourself a question. Is it running on the same sensors as we use in Europe, or is it running American frequencies? Look out for aftermarket systems. You don't want to spend all that time doing an inspection on an aftermarket system. It's fairly pointless. We had a hilarious situation where someone brought in a Porsche Cayenne and they said, oh, there's something wrong with the TPMS. Unfortunately, the customer hadn't checked the dashboard lights, so he thought it was his fault. And it actually had citron sensors inside it. So be really, really careful. Have the confidence to say, hang on a moment, let's go slowly here, let's watch out, let's do a sanity check. And look out for resets procedures that have not been followed as well. You could be having a lemon driving into your bays. If you don't keep your eyes open for it, you're going to get caught out. But hopefully your TPMS providers will have tech support to help you through that. We think that it's very important to take all of these procedures and incorporate them into your normal standard operating procedure. By that I'm talking about your vehicle health checks, your tyre inspection reports and so on. So that you can go away and make sure that those procedures are being followed on a regular basis. I think this is perhaps one of the most important ways that you're actually going to profit from TPMS. Engaging with the customer is so important. I think a lot of people don't even realise that they have TPMS in their vehicles. So engaging with them properly is a real opportunity to shine as a tyre retailer. If you have good point of sale material and you spot the vehicle has got TPMS, obviously it's going to become very, very mainstream very soon. Demonstrate it. Give the customer point of sale material. Say, oh, I see you've got some sensors on your vehicle. We're going to do an inspection on that. Here you go, why don't you have a little read of this? Just tells you a little about what's on your car. Physically demonstrate the negative findings of your inspection report. I think that's important. I spoke earlier about the seized valve cap, if you recollect. Go and tell them, look, this is seized. If I open it, I might be able to open it, I might not be able to open it. And this is what the cost is going to be for servicing, but if I can't service, this is what the cost is going to be for replacement. Engage with the customer, warn them in advance what these things are going to cost them. If you don't do that, it's going to be all your fault, and we don't want that to happen. Look out for incompatible components on the vehicle. Obviously, show them the corrosion. Say, look at that corrosion over there. Show them the low battery status on their sensor. Engage with them. Take them up to the tyre. They'll be amazed when they see that you can actually scan a tyre and get a low battery warning, or even pressure out of an electronic tool. It's a great opportunity to talk to your customers and show them a bit of new technology. Everyone loves a new gadget. And then, just like tyres really, explain the benefits of correctly maintain TPMS. Keeping your pressures correct, I think we all know what they are. Maximising tyre life, fuel efficiency, vehicle handling and so on. But it's important to engage. I can't say that enough. Advise on the MOT if it's applicable for that particular vehicle as well, and it obviously will become more and more applicable. Good to have good sales aids out there. Some examples of some point-of-sale material. What we also have is the NTDA will be refreshing their point-of-sale material shortly. Display it, show it in the customer-facing areas, hand it out to your customers. A TPMS video in your reception perhaps, maybe a bit intense, but it's possible. Update your website, update your signage. Use a goldfish bowl. I've just realised we didn't bring it over from our stand. That's why we've got a silly goldfish bowl on our table. It's full of broken sensors. Let the customer know they're not the only ones when that sensor breaks. It's quite a nice little subtle sales tool. Include important information on invoices and have a disclaimer if the customer does not want to do a service. Again, it's just a bit more detail. What we've done with this point of sale is it's really very, very simple, should we say, layman's English. A good opportunity to tell them, oh, we're going to go do an inspection and this is what we're going to go do on your vehicle. It's very subtle and you can obviously get it customised to your own business. Well, there we are. We've got so much training to do and so on, but there are going to be times that you're going to need technical support. This is where you need to go out to your wonderful TPMS providers, and there's many of them around us right now, and make sure they're giving you everything that you need. Some recommendations, they should be providing obviously with training and expertise. You should have a hotline to call directly, don't go straight through to sales teams, go straight through to the person who can help you while you've got a vehicle on the ramp. And hopefully you'll be provided with a whole selection of videos, knowledge bases, forums and so on. TPMS is a changing feast. If you have a look down here, what we have is what we call an ID locator chart. 2 years ago when we did this presentation, there was only that many different sensors out in the market. This chart now is showing you where the IDs are of every sensor that's going to be out there into the first quarter of next year. There are new generations coming out. There, as you can see here, there's 3 snap-in sensors there, as well as another rubber snap-in sensor there. It's becoming more and more common. These things are becoming more complicated. They all have different handling requirements. Very important you're getting the tech support from your various different suppliers out there to teach you how to handle that. What's interesting about some of the universal systems is, obviously new cars, sometimes they're running on new sensors and they've got new protocols. It's very important to get your software updated regularly and hopefully have a system that is regularly updated. So you can deal with, for example, that new Ford Fiesta or that crazy Tesla S that's down the road. Your TPMS providers need to really help you out with new procedures, data and so on. It's very important to lean on them. They're there to be leaned on. So here's perhaps the most exciting slide for all the TPMS providers in the crowd. Choices, choices, choices. Hopefully we've convinced you to get engaged with TPMS, but I'm not here to tell you which systems to use at all. That's for you to go away and think about. Lots of different ways of doing things. You could say different ways of skinning a cat perhaps, but your approach is really your choice. We would say look at how simple things are. Things are easy to do, it's going to give your staff confidence. If your staff have got confidence, they're going to want to change TPMS sensors. If they don't have confidence, well, you know how that works. Look out for an ability to clone. We personally think the ability to clone is very important. It's going to save you a lot of time. Coverage is like government statistics. Everyone is giving you different numbers. I'm fascinated at some of the information that some people are giving out today about some of the different coverage charts that are out there. Governments can spin numbers on unemployment. I think TPMS providers can spin numbers on sensor coverage data, but ask them detailed questions. And what I like to say is ask them the number of sensors that they can actually cover. Not the number of vehicles, the number of sensors. That tends to cut to the chase a little bit. Look at the cost of equipment. It does vary. There's some cheap solutions out there, there's some more expensive solutions out there. There's some tremendous functionality in some of the more expensive equipment. You might want to consider that for your businesses. Consider obsolescence. What happens when a new sensor comes out in a new vehicle? Can that technology deal with it? Look at the ability to reprogram sensors. Is the solution mobile in the workshop? And what's going to happen about new technologies?